Mackenzie Shirilla for her behavior after causing the deadly high-speed crash that killed her boyfriend, 20-year-old Dominic Russo, and his friend, 19-year-old Davian Flanagan.
But from my observations, there was never any, behaviors that looked like somebody who was remorseful. So lots of laughing, lots of giggling, makeup done every day. It was never this dark, smug, tough girl.
What makes someone throw away the only connection they have to the outside world? Is it impulsiveness, a desperate need for control, or a mindset that simply refuses to accept consequences? Why would an inmate already serving a life sentence risk losing one of the few privileges that still matters? The answer isn't as simple as most headlines want you to believe. Hidden inside disciplinary records is the real reason Mackenzie Shirilla is now banned from prison visitation, and almost everyone discussing this case is missing the bigger picture. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you'll understand what really led to that ban, and why it reveals far more than anyone expected. July 31st, 2022. Mackenzie Shirilla presses the gas pedal to 100%, accelerating to nearly 100 miles per hour before crashing into a brick building. Her boyfriend, Dominic Russo, and his friend, Davian Flanagan, die instantly. August 2024. That same woman, now serving 15 years to life for murder, is caught on a monitored prison video call exposing herself, while an outside visitor performs explicit sexual acts on camera. 2 moments, 2 years apart. The exact same pattern of recklessness. Newly unsealed disciplinary records from the Ohio Reformatory for Women reveal 36-count conduct violations filed against Mackenzie Shirilla. 32 resulted in guilty findings. While her mother campaigns for her innocence online, official state logs document hidden contraband, altered prison uniforms, stolen prescription medication, and explicit conduct that violated every security protocol. The question is no longer just about what happened that July morning. It's about what's happening right now. Because while Dominic's and Davian's families visit graves, the woman convicted of deliberately killing them is making headlines for prison misconduct that mirrors the same defiance that cost 2 young men their lives. This is how a high-profile double murder conviction became a prison discipline nightmare. And it starts with 5 seconds of full throttle that changed everything. If you want the complete investigation into what really happened, subscribe to Reopened Crime Scenes right now. We go deeper than the headlines. To understand why Mackenzie is currently banned from video visitation, we have to go back to the beginning. We have to talk about Dominic Russo and Davian Flanagan, because their deaths are the entire foundation of why this case matters. Dominic was 20 years old. Davian was 19. Both had families who loved them, friends who looked up to them, futures that should have unfolded over decades. Dominic was Mackenzie's boyfriend. Their relationship was volatile, on again and off again. Davian was a friend, present in the car for reasons that remain part of the tragic mystery of what happened in those final minutes. The crash occurred in Strongsville, Ohio. Mackenzie was driving her 2018 Toyota Camry. Surveillance cameras captured the vehicle accelerating at extreme speed, but the car's event data recorder became the prosecution's most devastating evidence. That black box told a story the defense could not explain away. The data showed the gas pedal pressed to 100% throttle, not 90%. Not a mistaken foot slip. 100% maximum acceleration, held for 5 continuous seconds. 5 seconds, while the car tore through a business park approaching speeds over 90 miles per hour. 5 seconds, while navigating a curve in the road. 5 seconds before the car straightened out and slammed directly into a brick building, killing both passengers on impact. Crash reconstruction experts testified that at those speeds, on that road, only a conscious, awake driver could have kept the car on the pavement. An unconscious person would have veered off course. But the data, surveillance footage, and physical evidence all pointed to the same conclusion. This was controlled. This was deliberate. This was a choice. Mackenzie's defense attorneys argued she suffered from an undiagnosed medical condition. They claimed she blacked out completely, had no memory of what happened. They painted a picture of a young life destroyed by a medical mystery, not a criminal act. The prosecution saw it differently. They presented the black box data, the surveillance video, walking through the seconds before impact. The science, physics, and forensics all proved the same thing. Mackenzie Shirilla made a conscious decision that morning, and that decision killed Dominic Russo and Davon Flanagan. Judge Rusty Costanaro reviewed all the evidence and delivered a verdict that would send Mackenzie to prison for potentially the rest of her life. Guilty of murder, not vehicular homicide. Murder. The judge specifically stated Mackenzie's actions were purposeful and controlled. She made a conscious choice. The sentence came swiftly. 15 years to life at the Ohio Reformatory for women. That verdict marked the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. Because what happened after Mackenzie entered that facility would shock corrections officers. When a 17-year-old convicted as an adult enters maximum security prison, the adjustment is brutal. Your conduct file becomes your entire identity. Everything gets documented. That file follows you to every parole hearing. For someone serving 15 to life, that file is your only resume. According to unsealed records, Mackenzie's conduct file tells a story of escalating defiance. 36 total conduct reports. 32 guilty findings. Guards documented instances of her being out of place during mandatory counts. In prison, the count is sacred. If one person is out of place, the facility can go into lockdown. It creates tension and shows disregard for everyone's safety. Routine cell shakedowns revealed contraband possession. Guards found altered state-issued clothing. In prison, uniformity is security. Modified uniforms signal defiance. Officers also discovered unauthorized arts and craft supplies, glitter, paint, stolen charms. Inside maximum security, these prove an inmate is sneaking items and operating outside controlled systems. If someone can hide glitter, they can hide something far more dangerous. Which brings us to the most serious violation. During one shakedown, guards discovered prescription medication that didn't belong to her. In prison, pills are currency, power, leverage. Having someone else's medication means buying, trading, stealing, or holding contraband that could lead to overdose or violence. The logs don't explain how Mackenzie obtained those pills, but they were found hidden in her possession. Then there's the violation that cost her video visitation privileges. According to official records, Mackenzie pleaded guilty to exposing herself during a monitored video call. The logs state the person on the other end was completely undressed and using adult toys on camera. Prison officials classified this as a Class 2 institutional rule violation. Video calls are monitored for a reason. They're a privilege, not a right. Calls are watched in real time to prevent security breaches and ensure rules are followed. When guards witnessed what was happening, they terminated the call immediately. Mackenzie was issued a 60-day ban on all video visitation. The debate surrounding her behavior is fierce. Some argue this is a young woman breaking under psychological pressure. They say isolation and trauma push inmates to act out desperately. Others see 32 guilty violations, hidden pills, explicit conduct. They see the same recklessness that put her behind bars. They remember the 92 miles per hour, the 100% throttle. They argue Mackenzie still refuses to accept consequences. While that debate rages online, two families continue to grieve. Dominic Russo and Davon Flanagan are not coming back. Their families live every day with unbearable loss. Watching the person responsible make headlines for continued misconduct only deepens that pain. Mackenzie Shirilla is locked in a battle between the life she wants and the reality the court handed her. Every violation goes into her permanent file. Every guilty finding damages her credibility. When parole eligibility comes, that file will be examined first. Right now, unsealed records show someone not following rules, someone struggling, someone spiraling. The question is whether anything will change or whether the pattern will continue. If you want part 2, where we investigate the trial evidence, the defense's medical claims, and potential appeals, subscribe to Reopened Crime Scenes. Hit that like button so this investigation reaches more people. Because the deeper you go into this case, the more complicated it becomes. And we're just getting started. One day. That's all it took to destroy Mackenzie Shirilla's last chance at freedom. While she was inside Ohio Reformatory for women racking up conduct violations, her defense team was fighting for a new trial. They filed their appeal with the Ohio Supreme Court, arguing the original trial was flawed, but the court rejected it. Not because of the evidence, not because of the law, because her lawyers missed the filing deadline by exactly 1 day. According to legal records, the defense team failed to calculate a leap year in their paperwork. The law required appeals within 365 days, but 2024 had 366. They filed on day 366. The Supreme Court said the rules are the rules. Deadlines are not suggestions. Her legal options are now completely gone. While Mackenzie's lawyers were fighting over calendar dates, Dominic Russo's and Davon Flanagan's families were marking another anniversary of the day their sons were killed. And inside those prison walls, newly released audio recordings reveal exactly what's driving Mackenzie's spiral into institutional chaos. If you want the complete investigation into how a double murder conviction became a prison discipline crisis, subscribe to Reopened Crime Scenes. We examine the evidence mainstream media won't touch. To understand why Mackenzie is breaking rule after rule, we have to look at the leaked phone call transcripts obtained by media outlets. These are actual recorded conversations between Mackenzie and her family, and they provide a raw, unfiltered window into her psychological state. In these calls, Mackenzie complains to her mother about the crushing boredom of her cell. It's not casual complaining. It sounds like desperation. In one call, she specifically states she didn't even know how to make a book stretch because there was absolutely nothing to do inside the facility. Think about the weight of that statement. Making a book stretch. When you're facing a life sentence, time becomes your worst enemy. You wake up to concrete walls, rigid routine, and decades of empty time stretching endlessly ahead. The extreme isolation and mind-numbing boredom appear to be exactly what's pushing her to act out. If she can't handle the silence of her cell, she creates chaos just to feel something, just to have some stimulation, some sense of control. But the prison system doesn't care about boredom. They care about order. They care about compliance. The contradiction between what her family says publicly and what the official records show is staggering. Her mother posts online, talks to media, tries to explain how Mackenzie is just trying to adapt, how she's misunderstood and trapped in a nightmare. As a parent, that instinct to protect your child is understandable. You want to believe the best, but the guards aren't logging 36 conduct violations by accident. They're not writing formal reports for entertainment. The state's documentation proves the reality is darker, more defiant, and far more chaotic than the public defense suggests. The family wants to tell one story. The prison logs tell another. And the prison's response to her boredom and defiance was swift. Institutional rules in Ohio require able-bodied inmates serving life sentences to work. They won't let you sit in a cell staring at walls, collecting violations. To enforce structure, the prison officially assigned Mackenzie a mandatory job as a food service worker in the kitchen. For this daily labor, she earns a standard maximum inmate wage of up to $24 per month. $24 for an entire month of waking before dawn, working in a loud, hot industrial prison kitchen, serving meals to hundreds of inmates, scrubbing down heavy equipment. $24 barely buys basic hygiene items from commissary. Maybe some ramen noodles, maybe instant coffee. The facility's approach is clear. If she's struggling with downtime that leads to violations, they'll fill that time with mandatory, exhausting labor. Working in the kitchen isn't a privilege. It's a reality check. It forces her to interact with the broader prison population under constant supervision of food service staff. And it physically drains her. Guards know an exhausted inmate is less likely to be altering uniforms late at night or hiding unauthorized medication during cell counts. They're using the structure of the kitchen job to forcefully break the cycle of rebellion. Whether it will work, or if she'll find new ways to push back against the system, remains to be seen. But the administration is doing everything possible to force her to realize she's no longer in control. And now, with the Supreme Court appeal permanently denied, her reality is set in stone. When you're serving 15 years to life, disciplinary records aren't wiped clean. This isn't high school where you get a fresh start. Every single one of those 32 guilty findings goes directly into her permanent file for the parole board to review. A pattern of 36% conduct violations does massive damage. It downgrades security status. It strips away privileges like tablets, commissary access, video calls. If you can't follow rules, the prison takes away your connection to the outside world until you're left with nothing but concrete walls. Most importantly, this behavioral record ensures that when her first parole eligibility date arrives in October 2037, the state can point directly to documented rebellion as reason to deny release. October 2037. She'll be in her early 30s. She'll walk into a room, sit before a parole board, and ask to go home. The board will review the crash, where the gas pedal was pushed to 100% at 92 miles per hour. Then they'll open her prison file and see 32 guilty conduct violations from her early years behind bars. The court said she was guilty of murder. The prison logs say she's defiant of authority. It's a massive hurdle to overcome. But while we examine unsealed records and legal technicalities, we cannot lose sight of what really matters. The families of Dominic Russo and Davon Flanagan don't get an appeal. They don't get a second chance to see their sons. While Mackenzie's lawyers fought over calendar days and filing deadlines, two families were forced to mark anniversaries of the day their boys were taken. The pain those families feel is permanent. They're serving a life sentence of their own. Watching the person responsible make headlines for breaking prison rules and arguing over paperwork has to be exhausting, infuriating, devastating. This brings up questions we need to consider. Given that Mackenzie's file contains 32 guilty findings, are prison guards targeting her because of her high-profile case? Some argue guards know exactly who she is from news coverage and are being extra hard on her. Or is she simply refusing to accept she's no longer in control of her life? When you go from regular teenager to lifer in maximum security, the loss of control is absolute. Is she lashing out because she can't handle being told when to sleep, when to eat, when to stand? And what about her legal situation? With the Supreme Court appeal denied over a one-day filing error, knowing her legal options are completely gone, will the crushing reality of her sentence finally force compliance? Or will behavioral issues worsen? Sometimes, when inmates realize they have nothing left to lose, they stop trying. They give in to chaos. Will the end of her appeals be a wake-up call or the final push into complete rebellion? The unsealed logs reveal frequent violations since incarceration. Do these show genuine inability to adapt to highly structured environments? Prison is a shock. Are these struggles common for young lifers adjusting to permanent sentences? It takes years for the brain to process you're never going home. Maybe the glitter, altered clothes, refusal to stand for count are messy symptoms of a young mind breaking under the weight of a life sentence. In leaked calls, Mackenzie expressed severe depression over extreme boredom directly preceding violations. She literally said she didn't know how to make a book stretch. Should correctional facilities provide more constructive stimulation for young inmates to prevent behavioral issues? If they offered more programs, education, ways to occupy minds, would we see fewer conduct reports? Or are strict administrative punishments like 60-day video bans entirely justified to maintain order? The prison says their job is security, not entertainment. With final legal appeals rejected, her path to freedom relies entirely on future parole hearings. How heavily should a parole board weigh early prison conduct violations from her 20s when evaluating readiness for release more than a decade later? If she cleans up her act for 10 years, should the board forgive 32 violations caught while adjusting to prison life? Or does this record show fundamental character flaws proving she's unsafe to release? The release of her disciplinary file has sparked intense public debate. Does making inmate behavioral records public serve transparency? Some say the public has a right to know how a convicted murderer behaves behind bars, especially when victims' families still suffer. Others ask if it invites unnecessary scrutiny, complicating rehabilitation. If every mistake is broadcast on news, does it make it impossible to quietly serve time and do the work to improve? The courtroom cameras are gone. Legal appeals are finished. Personal privileges are revoked. The reality of her situation is setting in. October 2037 is still years away. The question isn't just whether she'll survive that decade behind bars. It's whether she'll ever prove to a parole board that she's learned to follow rules. Because, right now, every violation in that file says she hasn't. And Dominic Russo and Davon Flanagan will never get the chance she's asking for. Subscribe to Reopened Crime Scenes for more investigations into cases that don't end when the verdict is read. Hit that like button if you want us to continue following Mackenzie's journey toward that 2037 parole hearing, because this story is far from over.